Well, welcome to the 1000 Hours Outside podcast. I am thrilled today to have a very special guest who has really influenced our family, Sharon Lovejoy. Sharon, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so glad to finally meet you sort of in person.
In person. This is awesome. We've met online a little bit through Instagram and through emailing, but it's really a pleasure to be sitting across from you face to face. Sharon has written many books. The one that influenced us right off the bat is called Roots, Shoots, Buckets, and Boots, which is such a clever title. Activities to do in the garden. This book here just changed our life, and we're going to be talking about that and Sharon's other books. She's got a lot of them. So let me tell you about Sharon. Sharon is a natural born storyteller and an award-winning author and illustrator. Her works in fiction and creative nonfiction include 10 books ranging from children's picture books to adult and children's organic gardening books, magazine articles about nature and gardening, and most recently a historic middle grade novel, which we have that one. It's a beautiful book. So a graduate with distinction in the field of art from San Diego State University, Sharon successfully combined her training in art with her love of botany and natural science. And you just have quite the set of accomplishments here, Sharon. I mean, a docent naturalist for the Morro Bay Museum of Natural History, for the Smithsonian Institution, a guest on the Today Show, the Victory Garden on PBS, numerous shows on HGTV, the Discovery Channel. I mean, this is a list. You are just impacting the world, Sharon.
Thank you. Oh, I try to keep busy.
Yeah, yes, I can tell. So 10 books. So I have 8 of them. I don't have my first bird book and bird feeder, which I looked up was super cute. It's a book where you learn about the different birds. And yeah, and it's actually like a little birdhouse. And then I don't have A Day in the Garden, the illustrated journal. But besides those, I've got the other 8, and they changed my life.
I'm so glad.
Karen,
well,
you
they
find
sold
that,
out. They sold out of the bird book, so I'm
yeah,
sorry.
right. You can't get it. I noticed that.
It was all about getting kids up close and personal with birds. So hopefully, I will get it published without the birdhouse.
Okay, yeah, that's a really cool book. Yeah, I saw that you can't. It's hard to get them, or they're like $75 because people are selling the ones that maybe they got a while ago. But I have 8 of them, and so my story that led me to you was that my parents are avid gardeners, and my grandparents grew up on farms, and my parents have a beautiful garden in their backyard. My in-laws, same thing, and it just wasn't something that interested me for a very long time. I remember as a child, my mom would always try and quiz me on what flower is this one, and I was like, I don't know. I wasn't interested. But once I had kids, I started to become more interested and, sort of trying with them different gardening things. And I thought, well, there must be a lot for them to learn. And anyway, I was really overwhelmed, Sharon. I didn't know the terminology. I didn't know anything. I didn't know germinate, and I didn't understand, how to figure out when to plant it and all of these different things. And it seems like it would be easy just popping a seed in the ground, but then it's like, well, plant this by that. And it just sort of was this confluence of confusion. And I had read a lot of gardening books, but just still felt very nervous to try for whatever reason. And I think when you first start, it can be a little more expensive because you don't have anything. And so I was nervous to try. And so we hadn't really done much gardening. And my midwife, she told me about your book, Roots, Shoots, Buckets, and Boots. And I think she sold it. She had a little store. She sold it in there. And I bought it. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love. I have this vivid memory of being out to dinner with my husband, which we didn't go out to dinner very much. Our kids are kind of clingy. So we had them over at my in-laws. And we went out for this dinner, and I had just gotten your book. And I don't think I talked to him the whole meal. I had a little pencil, and I was just mesmerized by the ideas and by the illustrations. I'm going to hold one up here. And what it did for me was it helped me reframe, I can do this with my kids and we're going to learn. So this picture is the sunflower house, which you do all your illustrations, right, Sharon?
Right, I do.
And this, I mean, this just to look through these books. And so this sunflower house, and then it's got this little poem that twists around inside the sunflower. It says, all summer long, we hid and played in the sunflower house's dappled shade. A roof of morning glory vines, twisted, tangled, intertwined, and close beside us, rustling leaves, had conversations with the breeze. Wow! This is just one
I,
page. And so I
I
sat
love, I
there.
love, I love writing children's poetry. It just makes me
Yes,
happy.
yeah. And so it reframed it for me instead of feeling like, oh, I might fail or I don't really know what I'm doing. It was like, oh, I should try this. It felt like this invitation and you made it seem easy and magical and something that was magnetic.
Yeah.
Like I can't skip
Magical.
this.
And I because you wrote to me and I started following you and watching how much joy you got and gave from your zinnias alone.
Mhm.
It is a magical thing, and it costs virtually nothing to introduce your kids to this and to have real adventures together.
Yeah, real adventures. And so this is our third, we just went through our third summer of planting. So the first year I just did, you have this list in your books of the easy things. So I think we tried radishes and we tried the zinnias and we tried morning glories, and that was our first year. And then the second year, which was last summer, and we planted gourds. And
That was great.
I tell you what, it has been you can't even really describe the amount of joy that it brings for such a little amount of money. The comparison there of just sort of going out and the magic from the very beginning sprouts all the way through the harvest, and then you dream again, right? It's like I just got an email yesterday from Baker Creek Seeds about their catalog for 2022 comes out in November, and you can order it now. And I was like, oh yay!
That's a
So
that's a that's a great catalog.
yeah,
And
and so it's
I
just full.
I loved just reading those catalogs and absorbing knowledge of the ages and Fedco, and Baker Creek, Renee Shepherd's, and they're incredibly filled with the knowledge and the heart of all those gardener people that try things out. So those are good. That's a good introduction too.
And I remember my grandma having them. I remember being at my grandma's house and her having the books. And I think back then you had to order it with a on a piece of paper and mail it in. That's what they look like. And back then I wasn't super interested, but I do remember her having those. And I got my first one this past year. And just like you said, there's so much. It's like a book.
It is. Didn't you grow moon and star watermelon?
Yes, we
I
sure
saw that.
did. We sure did. And that's
Oh,
another thing. I think it opened up my eyes. I didn't realize the amount of variety. We grew these tiger melons, I think they're called. They're the size of a baseball and they're striped. It might be tiger melons. Maybe it's tiger melons. They're striped like a tiger. And so we grew those and the moon and stars and all these different colors of morning glories. And then the zinnias, same thing. It's all these different varieties. And the gourds, I didn't realize, that you could grow a white pumpkin, a ghost pumpkin, or
I love them.
so
Well, but you know what you're really growing? You're growing a whole new generation of gardeners. And that's the important thing. It's not how well your zinnias did or when you got fungus on a plant. It's that your kids get to go through all of this, the ups, the downs, the excitement, the discoveries, and you're growing a whole new generation of what's really important, especially in these times.
yeah, I love that. And I think what I learned is that even if so much of it fails, in
Mhm.
quotes, even if so much of it doesn't go well, I had
Oh,
one year, I think, where three of our zinnias grew, just three. I think I had planted tons. We had chickens and they scratched them up and three grew, but three means you've got a bunch of flowers and they flowered until October here in Michigan. And I got just so much joy. That's what I've learned. And I think it's such a good parallel for life, that. It doesn't all have to
Right.
go your way to still be beautiful.
Our kids have to understand that everything isn't perfect, like on a computer game where you can work through things. Life is not that way at all, and a garden sure isn't that way from the ground up. It can be really a challenge. And if they're not resilient, if they don't face those challenges, they're not going to make it in life. So,
Yeah, it's really good parallels. So what
yeah.
I have, Sharon, here, I have a stack. Okay. I have a
Yay.
stack. I've got 8 of the 10. So what I'm hoping is just to talk through these books because, I think as parents, we buy a lot of resources for our kids and often we don't use them. There's like this dreamy looking resource and we think, but your books are books that we have really used. And what
Good.
I can't even really comprehend is how much is packed into these books. So I'd love to just talk through your books and kind of how you got to the different ones and maybe some of your favorite parts in them. So I want to start with this roots, shoots, buckets, and boots, since um, this was my first foray into your books, and
Yes.
then I got all the rest
You can
because
see.
I love them so much.
Hold
So
on. Okay, I got
yeah,
my old faded
sisters,
copy.
look at yours. And Sharon does all the illustrations for these. I mean, and they are whimsical. So these are fun books for adults and for kids, which I love that. Even the table of contents, I'm going to have people to come look at the YouTube video. I mean, look at this table of contents. There's so much detail here, Sharon. I love that you say in the introduction, you say, all knowledge is rooted in wonder. And what better place to cultivate wonder than in our own gardens? So, this is such a beautiful book. We've tried so many of the ideas. We've tried the sunflower house. And I mean, you just have, like I said, you just go page by page, and there's so much here and these beautiful illustrations, like these pumpkins. Look how pretty those are. So, I put in a couple little pieces of paper, but um, and to kind of guide me through. But you talk about this. Let me grab one little section. You talk about gourds. Gourds are Mother Nature's all-purpose plants. From birdhouses to bath sponges, drums to dolls, a garden draped in gourds can supply children with endless hours of fun and discoveries. Small ornamental mixed gourds are perfect hideout plants, will quickly engulf a playhouse or teepee with vines and a blaze of papery, star-shaped blossoms. One packet of seeds will produce colorful oddities that will look like apples, pears, oranges, warty monsters, and strange crowns studded with thorns. Children treasure hunt for the ugliest, strangest, scariest, and prettiest offspring. I mean, that is just three paragraphs out of this book. This book really is it changed my life because I wanted to do that.
Thank
You
you.
know, I want to get the one packet of gourd seeds, and do the treasure hunt. And like I say, it's just that in that one little, and the whole book is like that. You take one little bit and you get so much out of it. So tell us about root shoots, buckets, and boots. When did this one come out? Uh, do you have a favorite part in there?
This took a long time to write because I had my publisher, Workman Publishing, wanted a book from me, but they didn't know what they wanted. And I wanted a children's book. And when I know you saw the discovery walks inside the book where the kids go out and they taste something like a borage flower, or they see the little tomatillos that look like people in jackets. Well, I think when I spent 3 years writing not just paragraphs, but books for Workman, and I would submit them and they go, no. And then one morning I got up and I did a discovery walk, because that's what I did with my son every day from about the time he was 10 days old. I thought, why didn't I think of this? That day they said, that's what we want. We want that sense of discovery on every page. So first thing I had to do was to make it simple, to give people the easy things to grow. And that's what you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Uh, the top 20 plants for kids. And it was fun. It was fun just combing through everything and figuring out the ones. And I think Jeff sent you the article about our teaching garden. I tested everything out in there, and I could watch children and how they responded to things. And It was an everyday learning for me too. So the top 20 plants was really important, and the discovery walks. And things like learning that a 4 o'clock really opens at 4 o'clock, and that Linnaeus, did a flower clock. And I mean, there's just so much. I
So
started,
much.
I started with the pizza patch
Mhm.
because that's the favorite food of children. And they don't have to just be pepperoni and sausage. They can be, we did a party once at our house for children, and we did from appetizers to desserts. Every single course was a different pizza. And
How fun.
the end one was all fruits and whipped cream and powdered sugar and everything. So you can do that. So I started with the pizza patch. That was to get the kids involved. And then I did rainy day activities for those days that you can't go outside, when you might want to make markers or something. I tell a little bit of the history of everything that's in the garden, because plants have an ancient history and lineage, and we need to know that. I'm looking at Sniff and Snoop right now.
Yes. I mean, this book, there is more in this book than 50 books. I mean, like you said, it's interesting that they said they wanted a book with just a sense of discovery on every page. And it is that. It's
Well,
sense
that's what I
of
wanted too. I have to admit, I get really bored when I read most. Don't get mad at me, people, but when I read most garden books, plant the plants 6 inches apart, 1/4 inch deep, make sure your rows are straight. I think that rules are made to be broken sometimes. And children, they want to go out and toss things, and they'll learn that if they toss too many together, they're not going to grow. They'll be too congested. So it's all a learning process, and it's all discovery. It is all discovery.
I flipped open to this page, the evening stakeout. So this is a discovery walk. I mean,
I,
this just draws you in, Sharon.
I've always loved to take night walks. Jeff and I have a bat detector, so we can hear the sonar of the bats as they approach, and you
I
can
didn't
tell
know
if
there was such a thing.
yeah, bat detector, although the bats are certainly not doing too well right now, but we have a bat detector, and we love to walk at night and look at the constellations. And I thought, children are afraid to go out at night. And if you take a child out in a garden with a wonderful flashlight, and maybe with some red acetate over it so that it doesn't scare things and you can see things, you can learn so much at night. We took a night bug class, Jeff and I did, and they had painted the moth broth on a tree trunk, and they focused a light on the tree trunk, and they put a sheet underneath it, and there were, I don't know, maybe 2 dozen or 3 dozen different varieties of critters that we got to catch and look at up closely. And go to a sunflower head that's busy with bees during the day, and there might be 20 different incredible moths feeding on it at night. Each one of those secretions of nectar, they're incredible. So
Wow.
nighttime is really important. I understand that some people live in dangerous areas, but going out and discovering what's going on under the stars it's an eye opener and a heart opener, I'll tell you.
Yeah. And you have them. I remember the moth broth. The moth broth is in this book. And sort
Critical.
of just like what we were, or it's in this book or it's in one of the books.
It's in this one,
This
yes.
one. And the illustrations are just gorgeous. I remember, it's like you said, it's not just like here's a recipe. It's like here's a recipe plus some magical drawing, right? I mean, I love that about the book because that you just want to do it. You're like, oh, I can't. I mean, I write in all my books,
Yeah,
but
think
this
that
one I did like really light pencil, and so I just have this. Do this. Do this. It's all over the book. Try this.
I love it. I love it when I go to a used bookstore and I find books with notations and the marginal notations. But now I've started, because I have so many really rare old books, I started putting post-it notes in them so that I don't destroy the books, but there's some wonderful knowledge in the old ones.
Yeah. So I found it. I found the moth broth. And I like this because a child could look at the pictures, if a young child, a toddler, you've got the picture of the different things to do. And so It's almost like those books where I remember my mom had as a kid, like highlights magazines where it would have the words, but then it would have the picture. And so you would read that one little part of the story. That's what
That's
this book is.
really good.
Yeah, you
The,
can invite a little kid to do this with you.
when I wrote Little Green Island with a Little Red House, I decided I wanted it to be a rebus, which I grew up with things like the Little Red Hen. So there would be the picture and the word, and I associated and learned how to read that way. So Little Green Island with a Little Red House, that's why that is a rebus, so that kids can easily say the word and rhyme it in the scape of the whole thing. So
Yeah, okay,
it's
so I've got that one. I have that one next.
oh
Segue.
and
So
that's that's
you have all sorts of different kinds of books.
I do, because I like to do different things. I get bored when I do the same thing. The only thing I do over and over is stay married to my husband.
Good.
So aren't you glad, Jeff? Sometimes maybe not, but so if you read the rhyming scheme of Little Green Island with a Little Red House, you see that it's made to accommodate the mind of a child. So they can, I was never allowed to touch the lines of a book when as my grandmother was teaching me to read. So I figured that a rebus would help the kids. They'd see a house and a mouse and they could catch that whole thing.
Yeah. This has been a favorite book in our house. Um, and once again, I'm holding this up on the YouTube video, but this is just the dedication page and these drawings, Sharon. I mean,
You know what those are? That's when I hear those birds during from midnight on. That's when I hear the birds. So when you see the I think the song sparrow and the robin, they're the first singers that I hear in the morning. Or the owl is the first thing I hear hooting at night. Or I'm trying to think of the hawk that I used. Well, that was a while ago that I wrote that, but they all sort of come out in my life at those times, and the grasshopper. And I wanted kids to realize that all hours of the day and night you can hear all these different voices of things, and it is another case of magic. It really is magical.
yeah, it is. So this was a 2015 National Outdoor Book Award winner, The Little Green Island with a Little Red House, a book of colors and critters. So this podcast is going to be coming out right before the holiday season or right around the holiday season. I mean, this would be such a cute little stocking stuffer, or for a grandchild. On a little green island stands a little red house, and it's all the colors and the illustrations are beautiful. I was surprised, Sharon. Are there um I don't think that there are many authors that do a bunch of different types of books. Does that seem to be the case? Because you've got the middle grade novel, you've got this children's book. Um,
I wish you could see the pile that I'm working on now. Oh my gosh. I am enchanted by life. And if you're enchanted by life, yesterday I spent the whole day out looking at mushrooms, lichens, and mosses on Great Spruce Head Island. And I was I went with a man who is a PhD in mycology. So I got a worm's eye view of mushrooms, and I loved it. I'm enchanted by so many facets of life that I can't imagine only writing one kind of thing. I have 6 things waiting for Jeff's going to be sending off.
wow,
So,
wow,
that I want to give you an example. In my book, Camp Granny, I spent years trying to get all the different bird words that the birds said,
oh,
and
oh, that's awesome.
and both day and night, so that the kids could go out and hear the birds and maybe say, feed me, feed me. That's a chickadee. They don't just go chickadee dee dee, they say feed me. So it's just holding everything close to my heart and wanting to share it. And that's why I loved being a docent at the museum and sharing the wonder of nature with adults and children. Because I had a woman who said to me, she was 97, and she said, if it's indeed true, it's never too late to be a child at heart, this will be my best spring ever. I'm planting a sunflower house. And she sent me
Oh,
a picture, and in the picture she was there
wow.
holding a little glass of wine, and she said, no one under 65 allowed. It was for grown-up friends.
Oh, my best spring ever. And I do think gardening gives that to us. It gives us that. like sense of excitement or unknown or wonder what's going to happen, what's going to
Never
grow.
knowing. That's right. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tonight?
Yeah.
Plant
Yeah.
a poppy. Let the children plant a poppy and let them watch it escape from its casing. And it's just amazing to have the kids watch the poppy slowly open. It's a magical thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to overuse that word, but that does.
But it is though. It's this wonder. It's this, it breathes this freshness into life that, life can become dull or, just boring or like you had used that word or just kind of like the same, the doldrums, right? I think that's the word. And,
Editing.
but
Correct.
it adds it just with us. I mean, I do remember that the 3 summers ago, I just had three things. I had radishes and morning glories.
Now you have this jungle.
Yeah, but even with those three things, I was like, oh my goodness, and look how long they bloom and the what how vibrant the colors are. So I love that story about the 97-year-old. My best spring ever. Isn't that how we all hope our lives go?
Oh,
You know?
it touched my heart. It really did. I thought, and then I started leading elder walks, exploration walks. They're just as excited as children. You don't have to be 5, you can be 95, and it means something, discovering something.
And I think that's a really special thing about nature is that there isn't much else like it. There's a little bit of literature that kids and adults like. There's a movie or two that kids and adults like, but most of the time we're pretty separate, right? My kids like games that I don't. I don't like to play Candyland. I mean, it's a cute game, but I don't enjoy playing it. And but with nature, we from newborn, um, all the
Well,
way to the oldest of ages.
I started taking my son Noah out, who, by the way, is a fabulous gardener. And I think he's training, with me. He's working with the grands and with his wife. I started taking him out when he was 10 days old. And I grow a lot of scented pelargoniums. People call them scented geraniums. And I would put his hand on the peppermint pelargonium and then put it up by his nose, and you could see him respond to it.
Wow.
So, they're totally there when they're using all 5 of their senses. And one of the gardens that I loved making at my business was a 5 senses garden that invited children in to touch, to taste, to smell. So it involves all your senses. And what you said about Candyland, I'm not a great game player. In fact, I'm kind of a bad game player, but you're still, when you're doing that, you're in parallel time with the children. You're not really like this, but when you're out in nature, you're like this. You're both connected. Your heads are bumping together. You're passing things back and forth. It's different, totally different.
Right, because you both like it and you're both getting things out of it. I think it's just, it's something that connects all the generations. And so it's such a special thing. Um, all right, I've got a bunch of codes.
Oh, so you have the paperback, or does it
I
have
have a
color?
paperback.
Do you have color illustrations in it?
This one is black and white illustration.
Oh, well, the original was
Or-
all in the original was all in color,
Okay.
but that was really from my daily gardening and my experiences with the birds and my experiences with the toads. And for me, I love research, so I spent a lot of time researching. And I worked for Country Living Gardener the entire time that it was in operation, which was, Jeff, how many years was that?
93 to 2006.
93 to 2006. So many times a year I'd write a column, and I'd get hundreds of letters and people asking questions. So that's just sort of my personal take and how to do different kinds of gardens, like the scarecrow garden with the potato head scarecrow that looks like a bird of prey. That's an Amish thing. And I love doing the research for each piece and just getting the kids involved in it. So, and that's a book for grown-ups and children.
Yes.
Different.
Yes. I mean, I love this one. wanted to read if I could, a quick paragraph. It says tomatoes produce their best crops when they are sonicated. Is that how you pronounce that?
Sonicated. Yep.
Or vibrated by bumblebees. Sonication is a fancy name for what I call the Bumblebee Rumba, a rough and tumble dance that will induce the most hesitant of tomatoes to set fruit. So, I mean, these are things, and you just use the best words. The bumble snuggles against the antlers and begins turning, shivering, vibrating, and buzzing. The wild twirling dance is so powerful that she might bite into the anthers or else she will shake herself off the flower. I mean, the words that you use here, and I never heard of this. I've never heard of sonication. So to read a gardening book and to be so enthralled is really just a special thing. So I
You
just wanted to read that. And then you talked about the humblebee. I mean, I have learned so much from these books, Sharon.
know,
And then this one also talks about moonwort, which we haven't tried yet. But you talk about how kids use moonwort for earrings and coins. Like, can we talk about moonwort?
Lunaria.
I think so. It
Mhm.
says, my son called Noah called moonwort the money plant and the silver dollar bush when the translucent pods appear.
They're so easy to grow. You can get those seeds from most of our seeds people.
Okay.
And first they'll come up. I've got them all over my garden. They're what I call a tag along plant. When we moved from Cambria, where we had our teaching garden, into town, certain plants started coming up that came from my friend's garden, Mrs. Squibb. She was in her 90s. And one of those was Lunaria, or moonwort, or moon plant, or money plant. It has a lot of names. And first, it's a biennial. So the first year you might only get just a little cluster of plant. And the second year you'll get a taller cluster with a pink bloom on it. And then you just can watch the whole process as it grows and grows. And then it sets these beautiful pods. And if I were at home in California, I'd have a cluster of the pods here. And kids love playing with them. And we made crowns out of them. We made earrings, all sorts. So Lunaria is a must for kids. That's an easy peasy. And that's one of my top 20 plants, I believe, in Roots, Shoots, Buckets, and Boots. People really need to try that one.
Yeah, you talk about, I mean, so like I say, when I say like in one paragraph, you come out with 100 of ideas. Moonwort is irresistible to children as sunflowers are to goldfinches. When kids discover the ripened pods in the garden, they immediately know they've struck it rich. I mean, how fun. And then you said you use moonwort as fairy dishes and platters for pretend tea parties. You talk about thimble-sized servings of salad with flower petals and scallops that are hollyhock seeds, and dessert is a lemon pie, the center of a daisy. So, I mean, once again, this book right here is just filled with wonder and ideas. A blessing of toads, a guide to living with nature. So it looks different than the other ones. It looks more like a novel. Um,
It has a lot of pages. It does.
yeah, but I mean, it's just full of magic. So I
I
really,
think I think in Camp Granny, they sent a photographer from New York or Connecticut to California to photograph some of my gardens. And I do have moonwort, Lunaria, used in the moss garden the kids made, and the little lampshades made out of plants. And so, people can see how you can use those for fairy tea parties and for fairy houses and everything.
yeah. These really are very different gardening books because, like I said, I had bought a bunch, different gardening books, and I, I, I finished them and just felt overwhelmed, or like this is over my head. There's too much to know. I shouldn't even get started. And I left yours, read yours. I'm like just inspired. Like, I want to do all of these things. I can't wait for another gardening season, or I can't wait to plan. And so I've got Toad Cottages and Shooting Stars.
Which is Camp Granny.
Yeah.
They
Along the top, it says a grandma's bag of trips. So I thought that they were probably the same.
they are.
They've just been published under two different.
They
Um,
changed it from Toad Cottages and Shooting Stars to Camp Granny, which I didn't really want, because this is definitely not for just grannies. This Waldorf teachers, homeschoolers, everybody uses Camp Granny because it's got so many learning tools in it, so many projects. So To me, it's still Toad Cottages and Shooting Stars, but we'll call it Camp Granny.
Yeah, so if people want to find it, they can find it under Camp Granny. So this one has,
This one
like you said, this one has color photos. So
mixed in with,
illustrations. So that's a neat twist for this book.
well, there's a reason.
Fun.
The reason being that I sent many hundreds of paintings in, and substitute worker accidentally threw them away. So in order to come out on time, my beloved publisher, who I really loved, sent out to make up for the deficit, sent that out. But I really like that because it's a family album. No, those are my grandchildren, and that's who they are. Yeah, that's so out of the bad came the good, making lemonade out of lemons, and I like it better than I ever dreamed I could.
Well, I like it because it's different, and I think that kids see things like this. They see an image like that, and they can imagine themselves in it. I did not know that story, so those things that you drew were just and painted were completely lost.
They were gone. And it's so weird because my young grandson saw me a few days after I found out about it. And he said, "Amma, I dreamed that all your paintings were floating in the ocean." He said that. And I said, "Oh, I wonder if they dumped them in the ocean." But that he knew somehow that my things were gone. Isn't that weird? Yeah. But it worked out because now I have this. They've captured the children in time. They're grown up now. And my granddaughter Sarah is on the front cover. It's very important for a child who's half Chinese to see a book that's relevant to her, that shows somebody that looks like her. So
yeah, what a story. I mean, I think, a lot of times on this podcast, we're talking to authors and different people, and I think it's important to know people's stories, that this is hard. And to get the phone call that all your work has been accidentally thrown out, that's devastating.
I sort of crawled into the fetal position and covered up with my quilt, and Jeff said, "Come on, Sharon, don't be a chicken, get up." So yeah, it was hard. It's gone forever, but I do have those photos of the kids doing the actual projects that I wrote about and drew. So I'm happy.
Yeah. So this Camp Granny, like you said, this is the one with the bird words. So this has a page with all the bird words in here. Absolutely, this is a book for families. It's for grandparents, but it's also for teachers and for parents. We homeschool, so this has got great resources for us. So many different craft ideas. I put a little cardboard in the firefly lantern page.
Yes.
Because there's just so much to learn here. The fireflies' eggs and larvae, called glowworms, are bioluminescent, which means they emit light. What a great vocabulary word. We talk about how in some cultures, fireflies are tucked into carved and pierced gourds to use as natural lanterns, and that each species has its own sequence, intensity, and rhythm of flashing. Don't forget to release them before the night is over. So just like in all the other books, you read a couple lines, and there's it's so rich in the information that you give. So
I have that dream of going to the fireflies in Tennessee that all flash at the same time. Millions of fireflies. They don't have that rhythm but all at the same time. Can you imagine?
Oh, that would be so cool to see. How do they do that? They flash at the same time?
All of them, millions of them at a time. Yeah, you have to take your family down there. You have to get tickets.
Yeah.
And you sit out in the dark in chairs. And that's my dream next July. I'd really like to do that. So that's in Tennessee. I love things like how to make your backyard critter friendly in Camp Granny.
Oh, yes. Yes. I like that. I like that.
Those are easy projects for kids. That's on page 43, 42, to bring different kinds of hummingbirds and butterflies, and how to attract birds to the ground feeding birds out so you can watch them. And I really love that. I love being able to do that and to teach kids how simple it is to provide a habitat for them.
Yeah. And this one's filled with recipes.
Yes.
Same thing, like even on the recipe page, there's so much information. So Cindy Rankin's dump cake, and so, you talk about flavored sugars with petals. I mean, rose petals and I mean,
Frog, frog on a
lavender.
lily pad. Oh, I love the frog on a lily pad, which is on 82, where the kids, learn about making eggs in bread, frying them, and
Oh, that yes. Yeah, so
fluff.
this one has all sorts of fun recipes with a bunch of extras. Please play with your food and how to make caterpillars out of cucumbers. I'm looking at you. I mean, there's so many things. Fluffy clouds. Um, and then you just have all these little, yeah, the frog on a lily pad. This reminds me of those highlights magazines, right? Give
Uh,
children some butter and a knife, but the word isn't there, so they have to use the picture.
That's that rebus. That's
Yes,
using, that's that rebus where the kids can put the word in. It's like a mystery or a treasure hunt for them to see a thing and be able to say the word without knowing how to read. I love
yes,
that.
they get to be included. So you
Right.
have you have all sorts of ideas in here. Breakfast, lunch, dinner ideas. Um, and once again, I this is really special that you ended up having the photos.
Yes, my
Your kids.
grandkids, they're so wonderful. And they didn't know really what they were doing. They worked hard for a few days of shooting.
Yeah.
And but now they have something to show for it. They can look back and say, oh, I was really young when I did that.
And I think that people can look and say, like, look at this little toddler face. I can use, my child can be out there with me at a really young age. Look, remember I told you, I'm not sure if you can see it. Do this. This is the whole look.
That's
Yeah. So,
that's my Moses who's out there picking fairy berries,
oh,
Fraise du Bois,
yeah.
and he helped plant ginger, and he worked hard those days. He was wonderful. He was just 2 or 3 at that point.
How special. Granny's Magical Craft Box. So this is a fabulous book. It's with the holidays coming up. It's called Camp. You'll find it under Camp Granny. But what a fun gift for a grandparent, or a parent or a new parent or a teacher. It's just filled with awesome ideas and beautiful photos. So I don't even know how you come up with all this stuff, man. I can't come up with any good ideas. You got
I
books
have
full of stuff.
ideas. I just don't have time. I don't have enough time.
Yeah, for all the ideas. Okay, so this one I loved, Trowel and Error, which that is such a clever title. I love that. Trowel and Error, over 700 organic remedies, shortcuts, and tips for the gardener. So this one's been really helpful for me as a new gardener, but also I think this probably hits all the levels, right? It's ideas for people who have been doing it for
Right.
a long time. Um, so I stuck a little note in here on how to hasten the ripenings of squash and melons. All these, there's just so many, well, over 700. So many
You got it.
ideas.
What a detective. And I wrote maybe 450 pages. And my editor said to me, Sharon, people don't want a 7-course meal. They want hors d'oeuvres. You're going to have to cut some of this. So that's why it's only
Oh,
200 pages.
you had to
I
cut over half?
I had all the science, and she said, the science is wonderful. It's a good bibliography kind of thing. It's good for you to know it, but you do not want to present this as 452 pages. This is 200 pages of hard packed knowledge, germs of knowledge. And you can answer the questions if people ask them, but cut it down to hors d'oeuvre size.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it is great though. I mean, I do like the size of it, right? This is
It's a
good.
good size. It was,
Yeah.
I fitted it into my gardening apron, and that's why it's a
Yeah.
size. It fits in the pocket of my gardening apron. And my copies that I have are filthy because I take it out in the garden.
I bet. Okay, so let's take a minute. I want to talk about your illustrations. So, in one page here, this is the Slugfest page. I mean, there
Yeah.
are so many illustrations just on this one layout here. How long do you write first and then do your illustrations after? I mean,
I don't really
so
live
many
by those.
illustrations.
I don't really live by those kinds of rules. For instance, I'm writing a book about a 19th century female scientist who was overlooked, just as Beatrix Potter was overlooked as a scientist. And sometimes I just have to stop. Like yesterday, I stopped and did an illustration of her falling off a cliff and all the accoutrements that go with a scientist, and then I started writing again. So sometimes you don't want an idea to fly away because they're flightier than a hummingbird. And once they come and land on you, you need to get it down on paper.
I love that. You don't want an idea to fly away. That's good. I'm writing it down. So it doesn't fly away. I've got a couple more. We're running out of time. There's so many good books. So Sunflower Houses, a book for children and their grown-ups. I love that subtitle because how many books are there really for children and grown-ups? There's some, but there's not a lot. And so once again, you just got these beautiful illustrations. One of the things that really stuck out to me in this book, although like I said, there's so many things, was the floral clock garden. Something that I would never have really known about, except that we moved to this farmhouse. This is our third summer here, and whoever was here knew about gardening, and so they planted things that throughout the season, so then you start with the daffodils, and then there's tulips, and then there's poppies, and then there's there's like my mom would know the name. It's like a rose, like a spring rose. I always forget the names of things. But anyway, stuff blooms, throughout the summer, these alliums, and then there's the next thing. So I kind of knew a little bit about this succession planting, or I don't know what you would even call it. But then you have in here about during the day, in one day, having this rhythm of things that are going to bloom at different times.
I read a lot of old garden books from the 1800s and 1700s, and I read about Linnaeus's work and talking about a Linnaean flower clock. And actually, Jeff, I was speaking at a children's nature outdoor conference in Malmo, Sweden, and we went to Linnaeus's garden. Sadly, there wasn't a flower clock there, but there were all the plants with their binomial classification. So I started doing my own research of what I could grow and when it would open. So it took me 2 years to do that.
Wow.
It's wonderful. I mean, I was so excited when 4 o'clocks made their debut at 4 o'clock, it's just exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you have every hour on the hour. Starting at 2 a.m. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I mean, all the way through. And what I have been impressed with, Sharon, is that, these books, with the amount of amazing information that they have, each one has different things. There's not any crossover. So you find this, awesome idea of what a cool way to teach kids how to tell time.
I think there are a lot of back doors and avenues for getting through to kids without thumping on them. It's like parents who say, let's go work in the garden. Oh no, that's the worst thing you can do. Right. Don't ever say, let's go work, let's go play, let's go explore, let's go see what's going on, but don't say, let's go work.
One of the cool ideas in here was to make a rainbow. And like, if you even have an idea, there's a photo here to make a pot of gold at the end and use rocks and different types of flowers. So this one is Sunflower Houses, a book for children and their grown-ups. I'm going to read the front. Remember making clover chains, hollyhock dolls, and firefly lanterns, or hosting a fairy tea party. Remember checking when the 4 o'clocks bloom. These simple pleasures. Oh, I love that. And hundreds more are gathered here in a magical book of inspiration from the garden. So we love this one. Sunflower Houses. I've got 2 more here of yours. I have Hollyhock Days, garden adventures for the young at heart. We have a friend. So a friend of mine who grew zinnias before I really knew about them, and she's young, but she's got this wealth of knowledge about her. And they've got her family has 4 kids, and when her daughter was 4 or 5, she knew all the varieties. They
that's
great. Over with the flowers, and her daughter would know all these different varieties. And her daughter, who is now 8, her oldest, her favorite flower is a hollyhock. So this book really makes me think of her and So let's talk about this one, Hollyhock Days.
Well, that followed Sunflower Houses, and sadly, it went out of print. But Jeff and I stepped in and bought the last copies. My publisher no longer exists, and that happens a lot in the world of
Yeah.
publishing. But we still have some, and what was important for me was just to tell some of the traditions with things, and things like the hollyhock hermit that Jeff and I discovered up in the mountains. The man that he wouldn't talk to people, but he grew thousands of hollyhocks, every color. He had so many butterflies in his garden. So it's just more storytelling. People say that there's one profession that's the most ancient, and I don't agree. I say no, it's storytelling. I'm a storyteller, and that's what I love to do.
Yeah, and I in fact, the Hollyhock Hermit, that's where my little paper is here.
Oh,
I love
okay.
the story about this. You said, my grandmother Lovejoy always told me that the hollyhocks and humans love to keep company with each other. And so that story definitely drew me in. The crowd next to porches. And it's so interesting because we have hollyhocks here at our home that someone else planted that lived here before. And they're right up against the porch. They do. They
like to keep company with us humans. I mean, we're the ones that carry the water when they're thirsty, right?
Yeah, easy to grow a hollyhock tent. So this is just such a beautiful book. I love this one, Hollyhock Days. And like I said, to have this little friend of ours that she says that's her favorite flower. I'm like, oh, what a cute title. And then there's this.
Oh, I loved writing that. My grandma went the very first sentence in there.
Yes.
Mama gave her last breath the minute I took my first, or something. It was my grandmother Clark told me that her mother died when the moment she was born, and that's what started the whole story off. But it's really a book about friendship. It's really about friendship between two girls as different as day and night, and they became the best friends, and they escaped slavery and bondage and cruelty together. And I really got my basement learning on that because in my cousin Margaret's attic in Winchester, Virginia, I sat up in a log cabin and I read a trunk full of letters that were abolitionist letters and things from my Quaker part of my family. And that's what germinated the whole process of writing Running Out of Night. And I loved writing it. It's to just sit down and to not have an outline and to not have any expectations and to just let the words pour from you like a sweet spring. It's just a wonderful thing. It really is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. And the reviews on Amazon are amazing. Even on the front here, it says lush, detailed, total immersion storytelling. This is called Running Out of Night. And the image on the front, and like you said, it draws you in from the first sentence. Mama gave her last breath just as I took my first. Although Pa and my big brothers never said they blamed me for her death, I always felt it aching inside me like the rotten tooth our blacksmith fired out of my mouth. Why else would a Pa and his boys let a little girl come into the world and live for 12 years without giving her a name? That draws you in right from the beginning.
I
So
love
it's this
I
really
love
beautiful book.
that.
A middle grade novel. So everyone's always looking for middle grade novels, I think, or good for a family read aloud. This is just a beautiful book, Running Out of Night.
I've
So
got lots of wonderful letters from families. It's just amazing. It's been amazing.
Well, Sharon, I just want to thank you. These books, they're life changing. I don't really know how else to say that. Just that, like for the rest of my life, I'll have a garden, and I don't think I would have if not for
Good
reading.
girl. Good girl.
And I think my kids will, and I think that other people will. In fact, I send my stuff to you sometimes. I'm always sending stuff to my parents and my in-laws. Thank goodness for them. They're so encouraging. And always like I'm sending them pictures of my flowers, and my parents grew zinnias for the first time this year. So that's been a neat little bonding thing because they're avid gardeners. They always have a beautiful garden, and so they got to grow something new. But people are starting to send me their things, and there's zinnias, and well, that's it because that's the only thing I really talk about. But they're starting to send me pictures of their things, and I think Well, that stemmed from you and giving me the courage and to go forth and try and to give the steps. These are the easy things. These are the things you're not going to fail at, and you're going to get a lot of joy out of. So I just want to say thank you. I mean, these are labors of love. 2 years, 3 years to write these books. That's a lot, and um, I think they will live on forever as influential books for families and for kids.
Thank you
So,
so much.
so thank
Thanks
you.
for what you do.
Thank you for your time here today. Can we end with a favorite outdoor childhood memory of yours?
I see my grandmother who would come and get me in the morning, or I run through the hollyhocks. She had a fabulous garden, and she would carry a colander with her, and we'd pick berries or whatever we were using. And I keep a colander on a big nail outside my kitchen door in her honor. So that way, when the kids pick things, they could just wash them, get the worst of the dirt off, and maybe eat some of the things outside. So I see my grandmother Lovejoy in the sunlight.
Oh, it's beautiful. I think so many people associate their favorite and best childhood outdoor memories with grandparents. So I think you're inspiring all of us to do the same. Thank you, Sharon, so much. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Keep up the good work.